Dnieper River. I have a very interesting Twitter post I made a few days ago looking at the water levels in the Kakhovka Reservoir and talking about how realistic would it be for the Ukrainians to even try to cross over this area. So here's a satellite image of the before and after of the dam explosion, and you can see how really the true nature of the Dnieper River is revealed as the reservoir dries up. And so technically, you could have infantry cross over the now dried up desert sort of area, which was formerly known as the reservoir, and cross into Zaporizhia Oblast from there. That's certainly a possibility, but I'm going to get into why I find this to be very unrealistic. But first, look at this. This is how it looks on the ground. Look at all the cracks in the ground. It's very difficult for heavy loaded vehicles to cross through here. And let's say for a second, if they did, imagine if they did just try to cross through here all the way to the Russian positions in like Aner Hadar, for instance. It's completely open over here. There's zero cover. No trees, no nothing, no trench. Everything is open, and they'd also have to cross through the river, so that would take longer. They can't just like speed through the open area. They'd have to cross through the river. This would be totally a field day for the Russian Air Force and for the artillery. There would be nothing stopping them from completely bombarding the Ukrainians. But there's also the possibility that the ground under this entire former reservoir would actually crumble due to the heavy load from the vehicles that would be going at fast speeds. So they may not even be able to support such a high load of armored vehicles, which would be required for a fast offensive across the river. So I don't see that as likely, but here's just like some arrows of how it would look like. I do think though that a more realistic scenario would be if the Ukrainians just like made a minor incursion through the what I would call the deserts or the former reservoir territory. Over here, like you can see where my arrows are located. Maybe they would try to flank the Russian positions in a place like Vershina, which is a town over here, or in Luhove, where you have like all these fortifications. But it would be a pretty minor incursion. So it could potentially be pulled off if they conduct it fast enough. But even then, they would be obviously targeted by Russian artillery. Look at the distances across the river. So from Nikopol to Aner Hadar, it's like 4 miles of having to drive through the open area and crossing the river as well. Over here, at one of its most wide points, it would be 12 miles. Let's say the Ukrainians just did like a small scale crossing of the desert area from, I don't know, Klavny all the way to Vershina. That's like 5 miles. So you could see they'd have to traverse that 5 miles totally on their own. They'd be totally exposed. And I get that they'd be able to go through there pretty quickly, but you'd have Russian forces fortified in the trenches, ready for those forces to reach them. And they'd have a pretty good field of vision as the Ukrainians were approaching them. They'd have a good sight, and the Ukrainian forces would be on the lower elevation compared to the Russian positions because all of the water level that dried up, and so they'd be fired upon very easily from the ground and from above. I just find the entire thing pretty impractical. So that's my take on the entire situation. So I don't see Ukraine going through that. If they did, it would be catastrophic for them. So yeah, that's really the situation there. Let's go on to the Luhansk front.